Down the bottom. Go ahead. You go. You can go ahead there.
I now call to order our directors' meeting, September the 7th, 2023, time 6:30 p.m. We begin today by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of Woolastock Whig. These territories are covered by treaties of peace and friendship of the Woolastock Whig people first signed with the British Crown in 1725. Attendance has been taken. And before I move on, just a friendly reminder to everyone around the board, if you do a motion or second it, please say your name out loud so that we can have record of it. Thank you. Approval of the agenda, moved by,
Marty Forsyth.
second by,
We have 2024 on the top of the agenda.
but that's why I said 2023.
Okay.
So noted. Okay, second, any discussion? Ready for the question? All those in favor? Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried. Are there any conflict of interest for disclosure this evening? Nope. Move on now to the approval of the minutes, June the 6th, 2023.
Bob Powell or Macdo?
Second by,
Morrison. Emma.
any discussion? Ready for the question?
Question.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Approval of the minutes from June the 8th, 2023. Moved by,
Hayward.
second by,
Greg Erickson.
any discussion? Ready for the question?
Question.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. And approval of the minutes from June 22nd, 2023.
David Duplissin.
Second by,
Marty Forsyth.
any discussion? Ready for the question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Now we'll move on to the election of the vice chair. As you know, that John Bigger has had to step down because of his change of residence, leaving the position vacant. You may nominate a colleague or nominate yourself. If you have more than one candidate, Kelly will administer a secret ballot count to determine a successful individual. The term for this vice chair will run until our annual general meeting in April of 2024. The duties of the vice chair include working with the chair to determine committee assignments and acting in the absence of the chair. If you are nominated, you will have to agree to the nomination to move forward. Write-in ballots will be considered spoiled. Before I ask for nominations, are there any questions? No questions? I'd like to open it up for nominations for the vice chair.
I would nominate Derek Leadwell.
Derek Leadwell, will you accept?
Yes.
Okay, is there any other nominations?
We need a second.
Needs a seconder.
The seconder for Derek, okay?
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. Ask the second time, is there any further nominations? Third time, are there any further nominations? Then congratulations, Derek Leadwell, you will be the vice chair, and you'll be working closely with me and staff.
Thank you.
So, and I will be reaching out to you so that we can deal with the vacancy we have on our finance committee because of John's retirement. Thank you. Move on now to the committee reports. The Community Development Committee is Director Rogers. She's absent tonight. So staff lead Don Fitzgerald, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The package includes Director Rogers' report and all the supporting information that the committee dealt with during two meetings since our last directors meeting. I'll just highlight some of the main points before perhaps we have questions. And the June 30th meeting was an introductory meeting, more or less an orientation meeting. And we reviewed the legislative guidelines, the community development guide that was prepared by Environment and Local Government. We looked at our own strategic plan as it relates to community development, and all that supporting material is included in the package this evening. The consensus at that meeting was that community development is a very broad subject and will need to be really focused in our report if we're going to be able to make some kind of impact in our key areas. So in what the committee decided was in the subsequent meeting, they'd like to have a look at the relationships that we already have in the Capital Region Service Commission. And would like to spend some time thinking about where we go next. And so on July 24th, we started off the meeting, and Suzanne White, our social inclusion coordinator, outlined the agreement that we have with the Economic and Social Inclusion Corporation, which is a crown corporation of the province of New Brunswick. So this, we are party to an agreement that was entered into on our behalf by the transition facilitator last year. It's coming to an end, and the CEO and myself will be meeting with ESIC, and we will be looking at putting together a new agreement. And this time that will flow through the committee and then to the board for consideration. But in general terms, ESIC administers an overcoming poverty agenda. And there's a group throughout the province that were called Community Inclusion Networks, a group of stakeholders who were active in that area. And as a result of local government reform, that responsibility was transferred to us. And so that's the area that Suzanne is working with, trying to get our hands around, and we're trying to integrate into our operations, but that's very much a work in progress. In the past, that group, the Community Inclusion Network, has worked with a host corporation who holds their money and provides administrative help for them, and that has been Greater Fredericton Social Innovation. Staff are working on examining whether or not it makes sense for us to assume that role. And in that regard, later this month, I'm meeting with Greater Fredericton Social Inclusion. It's not a takeover, it's not a hostile takeover, it's about, you know, what's the best way to accomplish our shared goals. After that, the next presentation, Brett McCrae gave, who's the lead on transportation. And I know it's a pretty informative presentation, and talked about our legislative responsibility to provide a regional transportation system in the capital region. So we're required to do that. We can't say no, thank you. But what we can do is we can design it ourselves, and so that it suits our needs. And so Brett had a look at some of the things they're doing in Nova Scotia, where the province delivers regional transportation on a county basis. We had a little summary of what they're doing in southeast New Brunswick. And our committee's concern about this was sustainability, both from a financial perspective and from a volunteer engagement perspective. We don't have the answers to those things, but we don't want to start something that will implode due to either lack of resources, financial or human. So we're, you know, that's a bit of a Rubik's Cube that we're working on, and we're going to Brett is going to put together a group of people, interested stakeholders, and we're going to flow something up to the board so that we can meet our legislative responsibility. One of the things that I think everyone in the committee shared, that the committee shared with respect to transportation, is that we should be lobbying aggressively for the province to contribute to this challenge. New Brunswick is the only province in Canada that doesn't contribute to local and or regional transportation. So, you know, those aren't mutually exclusive. We're going to have to do both. We're going to have to lobby the province for better support, and we're going to have to deliver a transportation system. The second relationship that we inherited as a result of local government reform is with the resiliency group of justice and public safety. So it works very similar to what we see on ESIC. But this initiative grew out of the pandemic. So in 2020, the province was, in early 2020, we didn't know how long it was going to last. It was otherworldly. We go out in the streets, there's nobody there. I think we all sort of cast our thought back to that. We know what an unusual time it was. So the initiative started, well, how do we put ourselves in a position so that we're not overwhelmed by the next thing? And in that regard, Justice and Public Safety have identified 12 individuals to work on resiliency in the Regional Service Commission geography. And in our case, we work with a lady by the name of Carrie Bedford. She has a passion for this kind of work, and much like ESIC, they have a limited amount of funding that they can put into worthy projects. They also work with a host organization, and we're looking at whether or not we should fulfill that role. The areas that they're interested in, line up pretty clearly with what we are required to do as a result of local government reform. Looks at economic security, sustainable housing, the built environment, justice and education systems. So, we're going to try and expand that relationship. What we're going to try to do in this really broad area of community development is focus on where we can, make a difference, rather than trying to, give $200 to as many people as possible. That really isn't going to be impactful. So after that, we did look at the mandate that we have in the areas that the directors and their CAOs mentioned to our strategic plan consultants, and the things that were common throughout the region were an interest in housing, affordable housing, seniors care, aging in place, medical services, and physician recruitment. So those are the areas we're going to focus on. Should be aware that coming January, we're also going to be tagged with poverty, mental health, and homelessness. And we're waiting for more defined direction from environment and local government on that. So those are the areas where we thought that we should focus immediately. And in terms of trying to do that, it was decided that I'd meet with the chair, and we would develop, I call it a series of lunch and learns, where we could sort of take a functional area, have a look at who's engaged and active in that, and where are the insertion points where we can add value as opposed to trying to duplicate anything. So those were the two meetings. My own personal view is it's a very short first step on what is, I think it's going to be a long road for us. So Madam Chair, that's what happened at the meeting. I can say that we're fortunate that the members of this committee have a passion for the subject area, and they truly want to make a difference. So I think, and they're drawn from your councils, or counselors in your council throughout the region. So we have good geographic distribution. We have a lot of energy and a lot of experience. So cautiously optimistic.
Thank you for your report. Could I have somebody make a motion first, then we'll go to discussion? So I need someone to read the motion and second the motion. You want to read the motion? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam
Yes.
Chair. I move that the board receive the report of the Community Development Committee dated September 7th, 2023.
Got a seconder?
Move.
By,
Marty Forsyth.
thank you. Any discussion? Yes.
Just two quick comments. One, and I certainly appreciate, the relative newness of this file and the committee's deliberations. When it came to discussing transportation, I did notice in the absence of a discussion around accessibility in transportation. The city of Fredericton, as you know, runs a fixed route transit system, but we also are required to run a dial-a-bus system, provide transportation to those unable to use fixed route transit. That needs to be added to the transportation conversation, because you cannot from government, roll out a service that isn't accessible to everyone and discriminates based on accessibility. So we're gonna have to bake into our transportation conversations, how we can accommodate the accessibility needs of the populations that it serves. And I'm sorry that complicates things and makes it more expensive, but that is the nature of public transportation policy in Canada right now.
Thank you. Your comments have been noted. Any further discussion? No further discussion? Yes,
Are we looking at the province to fund many of these avenues? Like this has been downloaded and I don't know how we're gonna get the tax dollars in small municipalities to fund all of these. Like you mentioned, one transportation, New Brunswick needs to come to the table. Like, are they gonna come like in all these avenues? And if, I think we need to lobby for that if they're not.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, the committee is pretty clear that we need to lobby the province for funding and support. I'm not able to predict, my crystal ball with respect to how sensitive and responsive the province will be to those overtures. But we're certainly going to make them. But I mean, at the same time, it's a two-headed dragon. We also have the imperative that we need to do it. The Municipalities Act only says that municipalities must provide a select number of services. One of them is policing. And in our world, one of the services we must provide is a regional transportation system. So you have those two sometimes opposed imperatives, and I'm not sure, I can't predict how it'll go. I do know that we are very clear. The committee was very clear. They don't want to start something that's not sustainable financially or from a human resource point of view.
I would suggest we lobby them as much as possible. If that is possible.
I have a question.
yes.
What's your report? Great report. But a dollar factor in each one of them. You have like you were saying, but is there a dollar factor that you're looking at and talking about? Or is it just the big crystal ball that this is what we need, but if you're going to do this, there has to be a figure on it. Has there been a figure put?
Madam Chair, we're not at that point yet. I think Director Forsyth is right in describing right now. We're at the big crystal ball kind of phase. That's why the committee wants to look at each areas in more detail, and obviously, from that, we'll decide where recommend to this body where we think we should be active, and that, of course, will include financial, human, in-kind resources that it'll take to make it work.
Any further discussion?
Madam Chair, if I may,
Yes,
regarding Director Erickson's comments with regards to accessibility and so on, who mandated? Where does that mandate come from for the accessibility? And what would some of the other outlying factors that do we have a set of rules or guidelines to go by to act on as a committee? Or
So, Madam Chair, I can't specifically say today what all of the rules and regulations are around accessibility, but we can't leave people behind. And so whether there's a legislative matrix of what you must provide in what case, we don't want people in wheelchairs and walkers standing on the side of the road being passed over. Recipe for failure. And so I can tell you that there's a huge social conscience in the Community Development Committee. And I'd be shocked if they were to recommend to the board something that didn't address equality of access.
sorry, just to add clarity to my point. What I was referring to were the guidelines. So there's some structure in place that will need to be followed. for making these decisions, which would in that instance. Include accessibility. But what other guidelines are in place that perhaps we have a rule book to go by? For making these decisions.
So I think it's premature to ask that question, Madam Chair. I think it's an area that we need to report back on. And I think one of the things that I can take back to the committee as a result of this presentation is the board's request for clarity around accessibility and the commitments that we need to meet to do that. And so we'll flow that back to the committee and they'll deal with that and come back to this group.
And just before I come to you, is there anyone else around the table that has a comment to make or ask a question?
I'd like to make a comment on accessibility. We have your urban rides in Ormoco, but they can't take anyone that has a disability, like wheelchairs and anything. And if they do get a system, if we connect with Fredericton, the best system, you can't leave them on the street. I mean, they gotta go where they have to go, right? So there's gonna be a lot anyway. The province has to be involved in this. Yeah.
Yes,
One thing I would add, was have to see in the report was consideration for not just going it alone from the single RSC perspective and operating as a group in terms of looking at things such as purchasing different technological solutions and whatnot. And I think that's really important to look at a conventional perspective, not just individual RSCs. It's good to see.
okay, and I just gotta make sure, anybody else around the table? Director Morrison, do you have a question or comment to make at this time?
The only thing I'd be concerned about is the overall expense, is the burden on the taxpayers. I mean, we all know Fredericton runs this transit system at a loss. The amount of users don't pay for it. So I hate to be negative, but I don't know how the province expects the small municipalities to provide a transportation system for, throughout the region. I don't know how it's going to be paid for. There's the taxes are going up. We've got to talk to council last night. We had almost an 8% increase in the commission's budget. That's there was some pushback on that, but when you consider it's 8% with inflation and whatnot. But man, when we start looking at all these legislative services, where's the money going to come from? That's all I have to say.
Thank you. And Director Hart, do you have any comments to make at this time?
I can just let you know that we have been in talks a few times with Susan White, and we are trying to solicit for volunteer drivers, and also have given the information out to our seniors in the area to contact Urban Rides.
Thank you. Did you have anything? Yes.
In our area, Grand Lake, we also have urban rides, however, in only select areas. We stretch all the way to the airport, which is almost a month in. And if we have to try to facilitate the service throughout the entire area, it would be impossible for our taxpayers to take that on. I understand that areas like Fredericton have a robust bus system that they've been working at for years and years and years. However, I'm sure that we will have to give some thought to the process and the finances that go around.
Absolutely. And that's why we have the committee, and they'll come back and they'll report to us. They'll do the homework and the studies and bring that back to us.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, thank you. No further discussion. Ready for the question? All those in favor? Any
Aye.
opposed? No opposed, motion carried. Thank you, Don, and thank you, Director Craig. And move on now to number B, the Economic Expansion Committee, Director Nicklin, please.
Okay, we had our first meeting, and the purpose of the meeting really was to discuss the goals and the objectives and kind of to get everybody to understand what our aim was. We had a night team come in and give us a presentation with Andrew and Jean did it. And what they could offer with whether it be newcomers or with business opportunities, or if you need employees or business, what they could actually provide to us. So that was kind of a nice service and for us to understand a little better. And then we had an opportunity to have tourism give us presentation. We went through that and I think Rose reached out to almost everybody. If she hasn't, she surely will shortly. But at the end of the conversations, I had asked, maybe they could give us a summary, kind of in our areas, what we thought, what they thought, how they thought it was going. And they thought that might be a bit taxing. They didn't know how they could come up with that. And so then, and I got thinking about it after, you may be right, I maybe asked the wrong question. So I'm gonna take a stab at putting a report card, so to speak, together that will go out to the mayor, and I'm gonna issue it out to everybody and say, nothing too taxing, but if you don't feel it's working for you, what isn't working for you? If you don't feel Ignite is working for you, why aren't they working for you? And they can't fix what they don't know. And at the same point in time, we can't hold them to the fire. We're all paying for a service if we don't give them guidance. So I think that was the thing I concentrated on the highest about being able to, we're paying, I want it to be measurable. And so that was a key. The tourism, I think you've all seen that they've put out the paddling brochure. Did you see that? And they've been around to do, I think they did the highlight. But now I think in all of our areas, we've kind of looked at it and worked that time and said, there's more to our area than this or that. But unless we give them that information, we're pretty much not going to get a result back. And so that'll be important when it comes out. Overviews included development efforts with the COA, tourism, NB, and taking advantage of our funding opportunities. I think that's all important. And then I think we'll agree on our next meeting how we go back out and get it out so that the information is readily available to everybody quickly. Direction was also given to the staff and committee to consider measuring success, as I just said, the scorecard, the matrix. If there's something that when you see it that you think that we missed or you should be on there, send it back. That'll be the key. We will, I think we're going to try to meet again at the end of this month coming, and that'll be our second meeting. So hopefully at that point we can get our measurements down and give a better idea of what we want to see. So I, Kevin Nicklin, would like to move that the Capital Region Service Commission receive the report of the Economic Expansion Committee with the attached presentation from Ignite and Capital Region Tourism pursuant to the MOUs and the economic development of regional tourism promotion.
Second by,
Armando.
any discussion? No discussion? Ready for the question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Director Nicklin. Finance Committee 1, Director Corey, please.
Okay, so there's a first of 3 finance committee meetings that we've held over the summer. And first one was held on July 20th. And staff and directors in attendance, plus Tony Spares and Colin Spares from advisors to the fund. Meeting began with a review of the second quarter performance in the post-closure fund. Our investments were in compliance with the allocation targets specified in the investment policy statement. The second quarter yielded quarterly growth at 1.84 for the year, to date growth of 7.78%. The targeted annual return is 4.84. The second quarter contributions reflect the new contribution amount for engineering post-closure review report. Mr. Spares reviewed the market performance and expectations. He noted he is happy with the performance of the fund to date. With the rise in interest rates, bond markets have declined, but because the Capital Region Service Commission allocation in fixed income is less than 20% right now, we have not felt a significant negative impact. As inflation continues to be tamed, and if a recession were forthcoming, interest rates would decrease. But the investment policy statement allows for more investment in fixed income as it makes sense to do so. With Langdon reviewed the second quarter financial results for the commission, which are attached to the report. He noted that all divisions have exceeded their budgets for the first half of the year, with the exception of tourism, promotion, and economic development. Higher than budgeted corporate services expenses have led to small deficits in those two funds, and we expect this will continue for the remainder of the year. Salary and benefits are trending under budget in both planning and development and the solid waste division, as it has been challenging to fill open positions. Garbage tonnage and elementary soil tonnage continue to trend over budget. Power generation revenues are almost $100,000 higher than budgeted for the first half of the year, while engine repair expenses have tracked over budget. Community development fund has been active, with grants being funded through ESIC. Sept activity is still getting underway for the regional transportation, public safety, sport and recreation, cultural infrastructure, so expenses have been minimal. There being no further business, the meeting was adjourned at 12:44. I move the board receive the report of the finance committee dated September 7th, 2023.
Second.
David, blessing.
Any discussion? No discussion. Ready for the question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Director Ford. Move on now to the Regional Infrastructure Committee, Director Pleadwell, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Regional Infrastructure Committee, we met twice this summer, first on July 11th and the second time on August 21st. Prime objective at the July 11th meeting was to discuss the mandate and as well as give directions to staff with respect to a possible terms of reference, which was to be brought to us for review at our next meeting. That is circulated within your package, and I will actually spend some time reading some of the salient points of that terms of reference, because I think it's important, because it captured a lot of our discussion and a lot around the will of the committee to be true to our guiding principles and values that we've identified here as the Capital Regional Service Commission Board, and such as equitable outcomes and fiscal responsibility. On the August 21st meeting, that terms of reference was brought, we discussed it, and the outcome of the August 21st meeting was directions to staff to come back to the committee in September with some cost sharing options. Often when discussing about regional infrastructure, one of the most important things is cost finances, not unlike many things around this table. One other thing I'd be remiss to not mention is the importance of a inventory that has been undertaken by Jim Tech within the region to get an idea of the what out there in the capital region and all our member communities, what infrastructure exists that would fit under the different categories and what could be considered regional infrastructure. So to kind of give us some level sets as to what's out there for discussion amongst this group. Skipping down to the terms of reference, I do want to read a few things, and not everybody's read it in detail, but the principal statement in the terms of reference is to develop an appropriate cost sharing approach to regional infrastructure that considers more than tax base and population. The goal is to advance cost effective regional infrastructure and sub-regional infrastructure with the greatest health and social benefit to the region. Objectives being develop a continuously updated inventory of sport, cultural, and recreational infrastructure, identify regional, sub-regional infrastructure and potential gaps, promote inclusive infrastructure supported by evidence-based decision-making, promote appropriate development of natural and physical infrastructure, and identify an appropriate cost-sharing framework for the region. From a mandate and responsibilities perspective, we are following the Regional Service Delivery Act. But what's important is in doing this work, the committee shall consider Planning documents for the regions, the areas served by the infrastructure in the region, the ease of access to the infrastructure by residents of the region, the uniqueness of the infrastructure in the region, the scale and variety of sport, recreational, and cultural activities that the infrastructure may accommodate compared to other similar facilities in the region. The number of groups and associations that use the infrastructure on a regular basis, whether they are from within or outside the region. The impact of the infrastructure on the region, specifically whether it benefits the population as a whole. Considering impact on local member tax rates and recreational cultural infrastructure cost sharing agreements, facilitation of such an agreement, and related matters on construction, ownership, management, and direction. And I can go on and talk about examples and some other things, but I won't do that at this point. What I will do is ask that first. In a motion, I move that the Capital Regional Service Commission receive the receive the report of the Regional Infrastructure Committee.
I'll second it, very full second.
Any discussion? No discussion. Ready for the question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Your second motion, please.
Now, importantly, I move that the Capital Regional Service Commission adopt the attached terms of reference for the Regional Infrastructure Committee.
I second that, very full second.
Any discussion? Ready for the question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Director Pleadwell. Now we have to go into closed session, so I'd like someone to make a motion to go into closed session and someone second it.
So moved, morning.
And second by,
Greg Erickson.
okay, we're now in closed session. So there's two items on,
Madam Chair.
oh,